Hey, how's it going? I'm Mike,
And I'm Leanne.
and this is Calls to the Quarantine. Today, our guest is Smart Mark Sterling.
Thanks so much for coming on, Mark.
What's up, guys? Is this your first episode?
No, it's our fourth?
Oh, nice.
Fourth or
I think
fifth?
fourth. It's our
Okay.
first
Something like
episode
that.
with our legitimate equipment.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Well,
Nice.
Yeah.
until it falls over in about 20 seconds.
It's being held up by a pillow.
Yeah,
so.
don't shake that too
I have
much.
that same pillow. That's funny.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't
Pillow
like that pillow
twins.
that much.
Right.
Well, yeah. Thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it. Something to do here on a
Absolutely.
Tuesday night.
Yeah, absolutely. So we want to talk about you and your
Yeah.
experience through all of this. So why don't you set the stage, paint the picture for us. What were you doing before all of this started?
So you introduced me as Smart Mark Sterling. My real name is Mark Rattelle.
Is
but
it really though?
yes, I don't even know nowadays.
It's hard
But
making that character.
Yes, I'm a professional wrestler, an independent professional wrestler, and I also am a podcaster for a couple of podcasts. And before this thing happened, I was wrestling every weekend and producing the podcast during the week, and going to the gym a lot. And now I have my weekends back with a lot of free time. I am not wrestling. Wrestling has completely shut down, other than the two main companies, and even they have limitations. And the podcasting has actually sort of picked up. So I've sort of replaced a lot of that the time with more podcasting and more like content producing in a time where people are looking for things to do. We are trying to provide that.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about it?
To be honest, right now I feel fine. I think I wrestled last in February, maybe mid-February. Does that make sense?
That sounds like it makes sense. This all started in
It's
what?
pretty early.
March?
When was the hey, you have to stay home?
Mid-March.
I think it was like March 16th. It was a couple
Yeah.
days after St. Patrick's Day. I remember that. Like things started picking up right around St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe the last time I wrestled was like that first week of March. And I thought that I would miss it more. I don't necessarily dream of like missing it, if that makes any sense.
Right.
But I don't know. Like I used to get a lot of like, as a professional wrestler, a lot of like the the gusto to perform and stuff like that. That's how I sort of what I got out of wrestling. But I've sort of transplanted that into all the stuff that we're doing with the podcast. So I still feel I don't know. I still feel really good. I'm working on my art, if that makes any sense. There are people out there that would dispute that, but so I'm having a good time. I guess the thing that I miss the most is going to the actual gym, but other than that, I'm doing well.
Have you been working out at home?
Yeah, I've been doing. I have some weights, just like most people don't know me, so this was a big part of my life for the past 6 years. I would say is working out very hard every day, and so to have that taken away was pretty difficult. But I have some weights like little dumbbells, and I've figured out ways to get complete workouts with them. And also I've been using, here's a little tip. It's the Peloton app. Peloton is like a company that makes exercise bikes. And
oh yeah, I hear that's really good.
Yeah, they're awesome. And so the app started with people, you get on the bike and you do the classes, like a spin class remotely. But what they have added, this was way before, but people didn't know, in the app, they also have like strength classes, high intensity workouts with these trainers, and you don't need the bike, right? So they gave everybody 3 free months when the stay-at-home thing happened, because this is a premium app. So
That's an expensive bike.
Yes, very expensive bike.
Very expensive bike.
And the membership to the app is kind of a lot. So I've been doing these workouts like every day, and they're great. Multiple workouts with the trainers. and it's nice to switch things up. So Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like are they a publicly traded company? Do you know? Did their
I don't
stock
know.
just go up, or like
Probably.
maybe just their
Yeah, it
ratings
probably went
on?
up.
Yeah.
They're the bikes that have the TVs that have like the fake. You look at it and you're like, oh, I'm riding up the mountain right now.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Or you can dial in a trainer who runs the spin class for you or whatever. Yeah.
Very nice.
Where were you working out? You were going to a gym still?
Yeah. So I got a membership to a gym close to the house. Nice gym. But I just recently, when this thing started, I said 2 goals. Number one, I just moved in December to a new house, new state. So I said, I definitely want to make sure I unpack everything. I want to build a gym in my garage and I want to build an office. And I already did that in the last couple of weeks. So now I don't have a list, but that makes me feel good. At least I did that during this.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very productive.
Yeah.
Very nice.
And by
That's
build a
great.
gym, I mean, I put a rug down and put my weights at the end of it.
That's still building.
Yeah.
Right there.
It is.
In my mind.
Yeah.
It's
We
better.
built a chandelier.
What?
We did.
We installed it at least. So
Okay. That's great.
if you
We're-
putting
we're
down a rug is
electricians
building
now.
a gym, us installing a chandelier is also building it. I
That's
think.
great. That's great.
Yeah.
I like the logic.
And how would you say your mental health was before all of this?
I think I was actually pretty stressed out. I feel very busy right now. And I have completely free weekends and a lot of free nights. And before this, I was just really getting into the groove of like the new life because way before this, I worked 40 hours a week, plus produced 2 podcasts, plus was a professional wrestler. And when I say 40 hours a week, I was working just a regular 9-to-5 job. And that was insane. I look back at that and I don't know how I existed. I would work all day. I would come home. I would do dinner with family. And then I would work until 1 a.m, wake up and do it all over again, and then travel on the weekends.
Yeah. How much sleep were you getting?
Now 8+, which is great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm jealous.
Back then,
I've averaged 5 hours for the past like.
I average
8 years.
8, and Mike is like, "You sleep all the time." Like this
Yeah.
is
I average
normal.
like 5, and as he says it, I'm like, I work 40 hours, and I'm doing like 3 things too on top of that. I
yeah.
wonder why I don't sleep.
Yeah. I was like 4 to 5 back then, but
Stressful sounds about right.
but I've sort of, transitioning to the new life. I picked up a little more wrestling, started working more on the podcast. So I still didn't have that much time, but it was like a good stress, if that makes any sense. I was stressed out, but I was just like focused on all the stuff that I was doing. And now I'm gaining all this stuff back that I haven't had for multiple years. Like playing a video game. I literally haven't played a video game since 2018.
So are you on Animal Crossing?
No, I'm not.
Oh man.
Just like random things. Just having time to do that is actually very nice.
I had the same intention, but
I
Didn't do it?
stole the Switch to play Animal Crossing.
Oh.
I'm going home to grab my Xbox tomorrow.
Good.
Oh, it's so fun. I highly recommend it.
I thought about it. I've heard so much
It's
about
so
it. I
fun.
thought about it. Yeah.
It looks terrible in my opinion.
Come to my island. It's called Free Freaks.
I love those kind of like grindy games where you just
Yeah,
do
it
nothing.
looks like RuneScape.
Yeah.
It's
I'm in.
really
And
fun.
yeah.
Okay, so I have so many questions. My first question is, with the wrestling stuff, at what point did you realize that, like, oh shit, there's a pandemic coming and life is going to drastically change? Like, how did you realize this was coming, and when did you get the final notice that like you couldn't wrestle anymore?
It was pretty quick. I admittedly don't pay attention to the news as much as I should. But I have people, my mom is a healthcare worker, so she's telling me stuff all the time. But there was a weekend where it was very normal. I traveled to Maine from Massachusetts on a Saturday, wrestled a match, went to a brewery that day, went to stores on the way up, nothing. Went to a show where there was, 300 people crammed into a building. That was like the one weekend. And then the following weekend, that whole week, things are getting canceled. So certain states have to stay home. And I had another show the following weekend, or three of them. I had a show Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Friday, Saturday got canceled. And then Sunday we decided to do the show with no crowd, where we would just record the show and then put it out the next day on the internet. So this is for like my home sort of gym, Creative Pro Wrestling on Long Island. And that was kind of us being, I think, pretty irresponsible. Going against, we were going against like what people were telling us to do. So, but it was just us. It was the wrestlers in the room, and we weren't really sure about things. And I remember I drove to Long Island from Massachusetts that day. Brought a ton of hand sanitizer. Was very careful. Didn't go into any. Now this was 1 week from not giving a crap,
right,
to being literally kind of scared to drive to New York, not stopping at a rest stop, I walked in to get something to eat. When I got to New York, I didn't touch anything. So that was, it happened very fast. And then I remember like after I wrestled and like watching the guys that I wrestled like all day to see if they were like sniffling or coughing. And then after I like washed my body in hand sanitizer.
Yeah. I remember I like all of a sudden one day I like realized in my head, like, why am I so suspicious of everyone all of a sudden?
Yeah.
Like anyone makes a move and you're like, you?
Real quick.
Yeah, I definitely went through that. Was everyone kind of on the same page, like a little nervous, or were there like naysayers like, oh, this is ridiculous? How was it?
That day?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. Yeah. Most people, there was a few of us that were like, I don't know if we should be doing this. A couple of the wrestlers dropped off, which was fine.
Mm-hmm.
We put together a little show. It was nothing, I recorded it. I edited it the next day. We put it up on the internet on Monday as like hey, sorry, we canceled the show. Here it is free on the internet. Mm-hmm. So that was pretty good. And we created some content for people, but, yeah, I think that some people took it a little more seriously than others, I would say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How do you think wrestling without anyone in the audience went? Like, would you do that again?
Well, we kind of do it. We do it at Creative Pro a lot, where it's kind of like, so Creative Pro Wrestling is a place where you learn how to be a professional wrestler. That's where I started to train. It's run by former WWE superstar Kurt Hawkins. And
awesome.
So we have been doing this thing called Cap TV. It's a YouTube show. We actually have almost 100 episodes. Literally every week we put up an episode on YouTube of wrestling skits. It's literally a professional wrestling show produced by us. And we usually do once a month or once every 2 months closed tapings, and the audience is us. So we wrestle, but the guys who are not wrestling will cheer and whatever.
Boo.
It's fine because honestly, workers are a better crowd than fans sometimes, because they know when they're supposed to be clapping.
Right.
I hear it's been pretty common with wrestling too. Like they're just putting the other wrestlers out there as the fans, and I mean they're probably more fans than a lot of the fans are, since they're wrestlers.
So there's 2 shows on right now, and one of them is doing that. One of them is not. One of them, the WWE has no people in the crowd, not a single person. It sounds horrible. Yeah, it's hard to watch.
I heard WrestleMania was very
it's like awkward.
Very awkward.
The other one is AEW.
AEW has at least like 10 people, and it makes a world of difference.
Yeah.
Is that is that what the wrestling world is saying right now?
Like, oh yeah, big time.
Why isn't WWE listening?
Because they're very stubborn.
Huh.
That's right. They're very stubborn. That's just like their thing. They always do things their way.
All right.
But
all right, so had to stop that. Now you're able to work on podcasts a lot more. Tell us
Yeah.
about that. What are the podcasts about? How are they doing? Why do you think they're skyrocketing?
Yeah, so I produce 2 podcasts. One, the Major Wrestling Figure podcast with WWE superstar Kurt Hawkins and WWE superstar Zack Ryder, and then the other one is the Off the Top Rope podcast that I produce with some of my indie wrestling friends. And that is a podcast where we pair a craft beer with a match, and we just sort of drink beers and watch wrestling. And the wrestling figure one it's like really all about wrestling memorabilia. So it's like a niche audience, but we've really sort of cultivated a community of people that, I don't know, are just really into that kind of stuff. Some people like collecting. You know, people that collect pop figures or knickknacks or whatever it is.
Right.
The wrestling world has that among
Signed
their fans.
posters by their favorite stars.
Yeah, that wrestling figure thing is huge, and that's always been a huge niche for collecting. I know a lot of people into that.
Yeah, I remember growing up, my uncle was like obsessed, and he had like a bin full of Hulk Hogan like toys, and I used to play with them when I was little. Didn't really know what I was doing.
I never knew that about you.
There were a lot of them.
They're not toys, Leanne. Wrestling memorabilia.
Sorry.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Sorry, the memorabilia.
So, one thing to go back to the last thing we were talking about, the WWE has this big event every year called WrestleMania. It's the Super Bowl of wrestling, and it happens at the beginning of April every year. And it is a huge event wherever they pick. This year it was supposed to be in Tampa. And what happens is literally, 60 to 100,000 wrestling fans travel from around the world to go to this event. So maybe 8 years ago, all the wrestling brands sort of started to think, wait a second, if there's 80,000 wrestling fans in this city for this weekend, why don't we run a show? And then this guy started thinking that, and that guy started thinking that. So it became this entire weekend of hundreds of wrestling shows, podcasts, live shows, meet and greets, conventions. It's an insane thing, and it's a huge event for wrestlers, for anybody in the wrestling business. That entire thing was canceled. WWE still had WrestleMania, but they did it behind the closed doors in their own performance center in Orlando. But literally not a single event happened in Tampa. And we were scheduled to have a huge live show. The Major Wrestling Figure Podcast was going to have a live podcast show on the Friday before WrestleMania. And we sold the most tickets we ever did. We sold out of the VIP. We were almost sold out of general admission. And it was going to be just insane. It was going to be a huge part of our business for the year. And obviously that got canceled.
That's a bummer. That sounds like it was going to be awesome.
Oh, the whole thing was, it was going to be great. But what we decided to do a couple weeks ago was we wanted we called it Live 5. It was our 5th live show. Okay. So we still said we were going to have it. We gave a date that we were going to release it. And we basically did it like this. We had Skype calls. We all filmed our own locations. We basically did a live show remotely. We had like 20 different big wrestling guests from the industry either send us videos or join us on the calls, and we recorded it as professionally as we could. It took me over 100 hours to edit the thing together, and we put it up.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah, it was nuts. One of the busiest weeks I've ever had.
Well, because you had each person's hour or so long version, and you had to oh my god. And
I was adding the pizzazz to it, and
yeah.
But that's why we're only doing one-on-ones.
What's that?
Here. That's why we're doing one-on-ones here. I don't have that much time to edit.
So we put it up on YouTube, and we promoted it like it was an event that you had to be there to watch live, even though it was just like any standard YouTube video. Mm-hmm. And we had so many people watching live that we trended in the US, and we've never done that before.
Awesome.
So
wait, trended on what though?
on Twitter.
On Twitter. Wow.
Do you not know what that means?
I do know what that means.
Okay.
Because I have a secret Twitter
Never
account that
heard
I
of
used
Twitter.
to. I have a secret
You know?
Twitter account that I use just to like stalk people and know what the kids are talking about.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't want to sit here toot my own horn, but
No, it's
it,
awesome.
it went really well. And
you were
and
trending on Twitter.
the question you asked
Amazing.
was, why is it taking off? And I just think that, in a time where people are looking for entertainment, we are just trying to provide that, I guess. And I don't think that there would have been that many people sitting at home at 6 o'clock on a Friday night to watch a fake live show on YouTube.
That's very true.
I think that you're right about that.
That's my long-winded example.
That's awesome, though. So it sounds like you're getting creative with ways to entertain and kind of work with what's going on.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have any sort of anything like upcoming, anything else planned that you're gonna do? I know like Facebook just rolled out the ability to charge people for events. I don't even know if people have, I don't know if it's been used yet, but just curious what type of stuff you're talking about doing.
Yeah, well, one of the big things that we would do is go on these memorabilia hunts. Like, the guys travel all over America. So usually what they would do is they would land in a city and they would go to a wrestling shop or a card store or a collectible store and just kind of shop and film the vlog. And, a large portion of our community, that's what they were there for. So obviously we can't do that. So instead of doing that, we've sort of been providing like more historical, like deep dives on some of the memorabilia that we have. Like we sort of do some research on it. We do like longer form video podcasts on a specific wrestling figure that might be, I don't know, like very nostalgic for people, stuff like that. So we're trying to utilize the stuff that we have in our house and provide, educational value. Educational can be, to work
Have
with
you
that.
thought about like reaching out to any of the store owners and seeing if they do like a live event and like look around?
Oh my God. That is a great idea.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Holy crap.
I would
We
love
should
to
do a virtual fig hunt.
Yeah, that would be really fun.
I'm going to pitch it right when I get off the line.
Awesome.
I'll let you know.
Just make sure you give calls to the quarantine credit.
Yes, I will, for sure.
That's awesome. So your mental health before this was a little bit stressed.
Right.
Where would you say you are now?
I feel great. I would love to get back to the gym.
I love hearing that, Mark. I'm so glad you feel great.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I would love to get back to the gym, and I would love to not to tan a little bit, but I guess I'll be able to do that going outside. Yeah.
Oh no, I'm gonna lose it.
I'd love to get back to gym as well for the first time in
I really miss
2
the
years.
tanning
It's all the
beds,
quarantine's fault, though.
No, I'm enjoying the time with family. I've been like making food a lot, like experimenting with different foods.
You make sourdough bread?
We did. We made sourdough bread.
Very, very trendy
Nice.
right now.
It is.
Everyone's making
Sourdough bread is very in.
Very in.
We just made
New hot
regular
thing.
bread because we are unique and different.
Nice. I like it.
Yeah.
We've also
that's
been doing a
awesome.
lot of Legos. I've been introducing my daughter to big
pretty
form
jealous.
Legos. Yeah.
That's great.
Because the
And-
models I'm doing are nowhere near as easy as Legos, and I just wish I had some Legos sometimes.
You're building a C-3PO?
Yeah.
A model, like with glue and stuff.
No, I have like little pieces of metal. It's called Metal Earth, and it's the most frustrating model kit I've ever seen in my life. You build it with
It sounds
tweezers,
awesome, though.
pliers, and clippers.
But this was like day one of quarantine. We're like, oh, we're quarantined. He's like, all right, I gotta get a model to build now.
Yeah, I'm like, this could go on for months, and these things take me like 100-something hours to make. So,
What percentage
like 5 of them.
are you through it? How far are you through it?
I'm like a quarter way through the first one.
There's
Not very far.
Okay.
there's a foot.
There's a leg, And a foot.
There's not a leg.
There's a leg. You didn't
foot,
see the full
a calf,
leg.
and like
You didn't look
2/3 of a thigh.
You didn't look at
I like
the
it.
last part. There was a leg.
Sounds great.
A foot with a shin.
Yeah, it's awesome. But so you're feeling great. You're able to exercise. Sounds like a little bit less than you'd like, but you're still making sure that you're exercising.
Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome. So after all of this, what do you see changing permanently for yourself? Where do you think that this whole thing is going to take you in your career?
I think that, there's a lot of opportunities. Okay. So one giant thing that happened, that is not great is that, and we've talked about it a few times already, the WWE, they're still running their television shows, like I said, but they are not running live events, which is, the shows in front of crowds of people, which is a big part of their business. So a lot of their business is hurting. And a couple weeks ago, they did huge, large form releases. They released 20 talents. They released like a ton of every single producer they had. They released a lot of the office staff, and it's not a great thing for the wrestling business, but also the two guys that I do the podcast with were released. So they lost their jobs a few weeks ago, which has resulted in a spike in our podcast. So I think that people just want to support them now, I guess. I'm not really sure. But what that means is when we can have wrestling shows again, they're not with the WWE. They no longer have limitations. As WWE wrestlers, they could never go to another wrestling show. Only WWE shows. They had to clear events that they did with The Office.
Wow.
But now there are literally there's no handcuffs. So the amount of stuff that we can do as a wrestling brand, like now our podcast could be have a wrestling component to it. So there is a lot of stuff that we can be doing when the world sort of goes back to normal. That being said, I don't know if I'm being pessimistic about it, but I don't necessarily see shows coming back for a very long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
As a musician, I very much agree.
There's a lot of opinions out there on that. I'm sure you saw like the fall 2021 release date for music. Yeah.
Yeah. I just feel like I can see barbers coming back sometime in the summer or something like that. But
just
the necessity to have 300 people in a room for a pro wrestling show is not on a high priority list.
No.
Yeah.
So
all like the big summer music festivals are canceling already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
and
the cons like in the fall
it's in the process of being canceled, I'm sure, or postponed to who knows when.
Yeah. Like promoters will ask me, hey, are you available like the end of May? I'm like, bro, no,
yeah,
nobody's available at the end of May.
Yeah.
But
that's great though. At the risk of sounding like I have no idea what I'm talking about, which I don't, is there just no chance that these guys are gonna like get reached out to by WWE after all this is over? It's like permanently done for them.
I think, who knows? All I know is that they are, it was not a furlough, it was a release, and they are looking forward to the next chapter in their careers.
Okay.
I've been hearing a lot about the AEW, like they're coming up rising really fast.
Yeah, well, I mean that's
WWE,
that's an option.
If you're listening, you really need to get people in your audience.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you.
That is an option for them, but there's just they're not hiring now either, and there's no wrestling running. So it's a bad time for the guys, but at least we have the podcast that they can sort of focus on. But personally, my fear is that I am enjoying this like regular human life
Mm-hmm.
a lot. And I don't know if I'm going to want to travel every weekend, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing. That's the thought that I have now.
I
And
feel
I'm
you a lot
enjoying
there.
making food and eating normal
And
things and
you
like,
deserve to
yeah,
be able to make food.
and playing video games and things like that.
Like the idea of me not having to prepare for a tour coming up is actually really nice. I'm like
That's what
not
I'm
having to tell my
saying.
job like I'm not gonna be here in 3 weeks. I'm gonna be gone for a month.
Yeah.
It feels pretty nice.
I,
Finally
I,
found
I
Staying
some
with
feel
sort
your
of consistency.
family.
that is a huge, finally getting some sort of consistency,
Yeah,
normalized consistency is a huge thing for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, that's great. I'm glad to hear that you're doing so well. It sounds like, no matter what happens with all of this, it almost feels like for you, there's like lights at the end of each tunnel, which
Sure.
is really great. I'm happy for you. And, I know you mentioned at one point that you did basically everything on your to-do list at home. So obviously, other than talking to your podcast crew about getting this whole live shopping experience, is there
Right.
anything you can think of that you want to accomplish by the end of this?
Yeah, I actually I am working on a new podcast
3
idea.
podcasts.
Um
We got
but
to step up.
I
this
know.
one has like an end date.
We're just trying to make our first one seem professional.
Ours kind of has an end date too, so and that
Have a
end
new
date
Right.
is when
microphone.
quarantine ends.
I like it. Yeah, I would love to get that project off the ground. I think that it actually, similar to yours, has more of like a during this kind of theme. I
Okay.
don't think that this is like something that can work after.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I'd like to do that, but
Right.
I don't really have that much time. I'd like to continue playing video games. That's what I'd like to do. But
Yeah.
I do want to say, I feel slightly guilty. I know that there's a lot of people out there that are having a really hard time through this, whether it be just like mental health or, they're literally on the front lines, the healthcare people. So, I don't know. I hope that everybody is still doing their part, and whatever that may be, to help those people that are sort of working on the front lines.
Yeah. I mean, at the very least, Crocs is giving a free pair to all healthcare workers. My pair's
Oh,
on the way, so I'm very
nice.
excited.
That's
But
great.
yes, to your point, everyone's experience during this has been completely different. Some people have been much more fortunate than others.
Yeah.
Extreme thanks and gratitude to the people that are on the front line. And yeah, the hope of this podcast is for anyone that's listening to either maybe gain some hope or inspiration on things that they can do. If they are feeling depressed or if their mental health is hurting, maybe feeling inspired by some of the ideas that they hear or ways that different people are spending their time.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that sentiment. Thank you. And thank you
Yeah.
so much for coming on.
Yeah.
It was
Thank
so
yeah.
you.
nice talking
Is
to you.
there anything that you want to plug real quick that you haven't already?
No, I
Get your
don't think so.
stuff done. You got everything out. You got it all out. All right.
We did.
Awesome.
So what's the name of your beer podcast?
Off the Hop Rope. So
Off the
Twitter's
Hop
at
Rope.
Off the Hop Rope or at Silver Intuition. That's what you can follow on Twitter.
Awesome. And do you not
Very
want to
cool.
disclose the third podcast yet? We're not ready for that yet.
Yeah, that one's still in the I got to find a name stage.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Check out the other podcast and you'll be able to find that podcast.
Yes,
Eventually.
I'm sure there'll be links.
Mark, aka Smart Mark Sterling.
Yep.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Mark. I'm Mike.
And I'm Leanne.
And this is Calls to the Quarantine. We'll see you guys next time. Make sure you check us out on social media. On Instagram, just Calls to the Quarantine. Twitter, same thing.
YouTube.
We're on YouTube. Just search it. SoundCloud. We're not rappers, but we're on there.
Hey, speak for
Search
yourself.
it. We might be rappers at some point. Who knows how long this quarantine's going to go on for. And thank you so much.
Bye, Mark.
We'll see you later, Mark.
Thanks. See you guys.
Best of luck with everything.
Thank you.